are very valuable resource persons. As you can see, Dr. Shakila, Shamsu has already joined us. Shakila ma'am, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank
I
you.
can hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am. Good
Good morning.
morning
Good
and
morning.
welcome
Good
to
morning.
our
Yeah.
session. So,
Yeah.
ma'am,
Good morning, ma'am.
so, ma'am, the MMP 8 days courses also we are going to launch with this batch, and they have decided upon 16th for the first day of that course. And let us hope that we will have it in the next week for this batch. And of course, Dr. Shakila Shamsu will be an integral part of it. So, Shakila ma'am, this is your fourth and last session with this batch. I wanted to thank you for all your time and the expertise you shared with our participants. And I request everyone to make the very best out of it with the questions and answers. I always find these sessions to be highly interactive also. So thank you very much, Dr. Shakila Shamsu.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. And it was nice to have these 4 extended sessions. I could really cover them in detail and also spare some time to, really understand from them what are the real concerns on ground. Because
Yes.
policy implementation becomes more meaningful only when we know the grassroots level issues which are
Yes.
actually faced by those who are implementing it. It's very nice to have a lot of idealism and all that, but pragmatically, what are the issues that they face? So for me also, it was a kind of an eye opener, and the
Hmm.
group is also quite representative of various disciplines and quite
Yes.
vibrant in sort of asking. I think we have
I'm
stuck a
sure.
rapport with having 4 sessions, which is quite unusual
Yes.
for us normally.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
thank you very
Yes.
much, and look
Thank you.
forward to the MMTC ones also. No problem,
Yes, yes,
and
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
we'll start.
Won't happen without you. Won't happen without you at
No, no, no,
AMU.
that's not.
Yes,
I've already agreed to a lot of institutions who have
I
called me,
understand.
so I
Huh.
think they've put me there. So I'm happy with that. That's something that I
That will be
feel
great.
very passionate about, and that is the only reason why I think we should spread the word around. And if
Hmm.
institutions are able to own those changes and those reforms, their sense of ownership in trying to implement those reforms becomes very critical to translate them on ground. Otherwise, you will feel
Yes,
somebody is imposing something and we are forced to do it. That is not the way social reforms happen. It has to come from within each one of us as stakeholders in that. So, thank you, Dr.
yes.
Faiza, for this opportunity. And thank you for being here. And we'll take forward the session. Or you had any more housekeeping announcements to be made?
No, no, ma'am. I'm done with that in the morning today,
Yes.
and this is all entirely yours. We already have more than 160 participants. Very very soon we'll be having more than 200. And thank you very much. It's over to you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. So, good morning, all of you. And we are entering the last and
Good
final
morning, ma'am.
session.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
ma'am.
morning, ma'am.
Yeah, good
Good
morning to
morning,
each one of
ma'am.
you.
Good
Yeah,
morning,
to
ma'am.
each one of you. Thank you for your messages of good morning and oral greetings also. So, here we are on October 6th. We are having our final session on the national education policy. We had 3 sessions earlier, and to recapitulate and summarize what we discussed so far, we have tried to, in the very first session, give you a rationale of the policy, an overview, and justify the reasons why such recommendations have been brought forward in trying to understand the changing scenarios of knowledge and learning, along with the fact that we are very much technologically driven, and at the same time having a largest youth population where we propound to also ensure the sustainable development goals require these kind of reforms to take off on ground. And in the first session, we have tried to focus on the 4-year, 3-year, 4-year flexible undergraduate program, which is by character quite different from the existing one in terms of the flexibilities of options, in terms of the integrated learning, and the idea of promoting the holistic development of our students, equipping them with the right kind of multiple sets of knowledge, skills, and capabilities. So the whole idea of multiple entry and exit, the idea of mandatory internships, certification at every year that you complete, the composition of the 4-year program. Along with that, the Academic Bank of Credit, the National Higher Education Qualification Framework, and the National Credit Framework. Thereafter, we have talked in the subsequent session about optimal learning environments for students and looking at the whole gamut of counseling and mentoring and promoting health and well-being of the students, and the role of the faculty becoming very, very significant to move away or to sort of wean away from rote-based teaching and forcing students to memorize things, to move towards active learning environments and creating what we may call a kind of an interaction of the learners with the faculty in a mode of more facilitating, enabling ways, learning how to learn, creating and instilling the joy of learning through use of activities such as projects and group discussions and quizzes and so on. So the whole role of the faculty becomes uppermost in trying to sort of engage with the students, engage with the curricula, engage with the way in which the learning becomes more enriched and outcome based and learner centered, as we say. We use that word without understanding what it means, but it means that you actually move towards outcome based education, looking at learning outcomes. And in that same session, we also tried to cover about the research, importance of research and the National Research Foundation, as well as the significance of open and distance learning, as well as skill development, which has now been embedded within the mainstream education, and the acceptance that skills are as much important as much as cognitive knowledge. And so higher order skills coexist with skill-based learning, and that acquisition of skills is also something that the 21st century calls for. We have then tried to look at the structure of higher education, and in terms of understanding how the existing higher education institutions, which are currently classified or categorized or identified by virtue of the nature of funding or the jurisdiction that they enjoy or the kind of character in terms of affiliation and so on, has been sort of re-looked at by the functionality of higher education, of teaching, research, and extension, and therefore talking in terms of teaching intensive universities and research intensive universities or multidisciplinary education and research universities, and a major reform to try and move away from the affiliating system to a system of gradually acquiring what we call graded autonomy and creating what we call degree granting autonomous colleges. For doing all this, a very important instrumentality is the preparation of a strategic plan of action, which we have called as the institutional development plan. So an institutional development plan is a democratic exercise of planning of your own institution's plan of action, how you would like to see your institution going forward. So single discipline institutions, how they can convert to multidisciplinarity, whether they have to enter into clustering arrangements, whether they are able to offer new programs by creating new departments. For all this, taking a stock of what your institution is at the current status in terms of what we call a very robust SWOT analysis or a SWOT analysis of the institution, in what strengths we have, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges that we have, has to be done while preparing an IDP. It cannot be done in isolation. It cannot be done in a vacuum. It cannot be done in a theoretical understanding. It has to take on ground what is there, what we are having, and what we can take forward, and what we are capable of. And therefore, all these reforms we are talking of would require us to have short-term, medium-term, and long-term planning, and also identify what are the short-term goals, what are the medium-term goals, and what are the long-term goals. This is very, very critical, because no organization, and particularly in education sector, can really go forward unless they do this kind of very, very important strategic planning. That is absolutely missing now, because all that the higher education institutions are doing, be they universities or our own centrally funded institutions, we are articulating a vision statement and we are articulating a mission statement, a set of mission statements. And then we broadly talk in terms of goals and objectives, but we do not look at it as flowing from it. So the goals or the objectives and so on are flowing into the mission, and from the mission trying to achieve the vision. So when you create the goals, how you identify what are those key performance indicators and how these can translate into realization of goals. This is a elaborate exercise, and as I mentioned, for all these, the guidelines have already been brought out by the University Grants Commission, and it's very important for us as educators also to get and understand this. Then we talked in terms of the whole idea of regulation and internal governance, and talking in terms of empowered board of governors, which should be very sort of autonomous, and which are empowered bodies created by the institution themselves to avoid a lot of external interference, be it from the government or be it from the bureaucratic setup. Always, we would like to see academic institutions headed by academicians, and therefore universities should have all the top leadership positions and the top management positions to be headed by people coming from academy, and therefore the faculty's leadership development also becomes a very important step in that direction. So having talked about internal governance and that we should use a lot of technology in terms of data management and enterprise resource planning and so on, so that you don't have a duplication of efforts and a waste of man hours where faculty are doubling up to do a lot of administrative work. This all gets eased out because you have a real-time system of data management, so that that same data can flow into different requirements, whether it is for All India Survey or for the assessment or for the accreditation or for the ranking. These same data can take it forward. And then we talked in terms about the regulatory mechanism, which, as I said, is work in progress. And once that comes into being, which might come out as an act of the parliament, then you will see a completely new architecture which regulates the higher education scenario. So we have covered all this so far. And in today's session, what I really want to come back and sort of reinforce a little bit on the outcome-based education, on the changes that are being envisaged in teacher education, because some of you must be coming from the field of education, B.Ed and so on. So also in terms of the role of the technology, internationalization of higher education, and language in education. But before I go to that, on what we have covered in the 3 sessions, if we do have a couple of questions, because it's just about 11:13, I can spare 2 minutes if there are any questions on what we have covered so far before I go on to the session that I intend to cover today. Any questions, specific questions? Okay, except for the fact that yeah, Dr. Seema, yeah, please go ahead.
मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है मैम कि अभी जब हमारे आर्ट स्ट्रीम वाले हैं वो साइंस का कोई सब्जेक्ट ले रहे हैं, तो हमारे बच्चों का तो लेवल मैम बहुत लो है, दे आर नॉट एबल टू डू देयर बीए कोर्सेज, तो दे आर फीलिंग वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू डू दीज कोर्सेज, लाइक जैसे मैथमेटिक्स ले लिया उन्होंने, तो मैम इस पे हम कैसे काम करें?
इसमें एक चीज सीमा आप समझ लेना चाहिए, हमने किसी स्टूडेंट को फोर्स नहीं किया है कि आप आर्ट्स के सब्जेक्ट छोड़ते हुए साइंस लीजिए या साइंस के सब्जेक्ट छोड़ते हुए आर्ट्स लीजिए। हमने यही किया है कि ये आपका ऑप्शन अवेलेबल है। अब वो स्टूडेंट का जो कैपेबिलिटी है ये तो वो खुद समझ लेना चाहिए। इसके बावजूद ये भी बता सकते हैं कि अगर कोई बच्चा का फाउंडेशन, क्योंकि जो 12वीं तक सीखा हुआ है उसने, 12th स्टैंडर्ड तक उसने जो सीखा है, समझो उसने मैथ सीखा ही नहीं है, जिसमें उसको फाउंडेशनल पता ही नहीं है, तो उन्हें पहले ही बता देना चाहिए कि आप अगर मैथमेटिक्स लोगे या फिजिक्स लोगे या केमिस्ट्री लोगे या कोई साइंस का स्टूडेंट इकोनॉमिक्स लेना चाहते हैं, तो उनको पहले ही बता देना चाहिए कि आपका हो सकता है कि थियोरेटिकल और कंसेप्चुअल बैकग्राउंड बहुत वीक है। तो ये पहले बताते हुए भी वो स्टूडेंट बोल रहा है कि नहीं मैं ये करना चाहता हूँ और मुझे वो रुचि है और मैं अपने आप से मैं पढ़ाई करके मैं आगे लेके जा सकता हूँ और ले सकती हूँ, तो यू कैन नॉट स्टॉप दैट स्टूडेंट. द आइडिया इज नथिंग इज फोर्स्ड. बट अगर स्टूडेंट चाहता है ना, अभी ये एक और ऑप्शन ये है, क्योंकि हमने जैसे बताया कि 40-40 क्रेडिट आप हर साल करते हो, हमने ये भी बताया कि हम 10% एडिशनल जो 120 क्रेडिट है 3 साल के, हम 132 तक अलाउ करेंगे. तो बच्चों को ना उनको sort of let us say डिस्करेज न करते हुए उनको ये बोल सकते कि चलो आप ट्राई कीजिए, आप 3 क्रेडिट या 4 क्रेडिट का आप ट्राई कीजिए जो फंडामेंटल लेवल के हैं, और अगर नहीं है तो आप एडिशनल क्रेडिट्स लेते हुए ये कोर्स आप छोड़ भी सकते हो और बाकी आप एडिशनल क्रेडिट्स बाद में ले सकते हो. So there are 2-3 options that you can try, but let us understand that students also cannot merely say that I have an interest, but I don't have any knowledge and I would like to take it up. And we also sit with an assumption, which is not actually wrong. Wrong नहीं है वो, क्योंकि जैसे हिस्ट्री सीखना है या सोशियोलॉजी सीखना है या पॉलिटिकल साइंस या लैंग्वेज या मैथ, ये सब्जेक्ट्स जब सीखते हैं, इवन लैंग्वेज फॉर दैट मैटर, आप अगर एक लैंग्वेज की लिपि और उसके बेसिक एस्पेक्ट्स नहीं समझते हो और जाके आप इंग्लिश लिटरेचर लेना चाहते हो, देन देयर विल बी अ मिसमैच. सो जो भी विषय बच्चों को पहले ही हम इंडक्शन मीटिंग में उन्हें सेंसिटिव करना चाहिए और उनको नॉलेज सॉर्ट ऑफ अवेयर करना चाहिए कि हमने ये ऑप्शन आपको दिया है आपकी रुचि से और आपकी इंटरेस्ट के हिसाब से. बट अगर आपको वो बेसिक फाउंडेशन अगर नहीं है तो हो सकता है ये विषय आपको टफ लगेगा. बट डोंट डिस्करेज देम. मैंने जैसे बताया आपको एक्स्ट्रा क्रेडिट्स की ऑप्शन है, लेट देम ट्राई इट आउट. क्योंकि जब आप डिस्करेज करते हो, हम हो सकता है कि कोई स्टूडेंट काफी ब्राइट है और अगर उसने वो फाउंडेशन खुद अक्वायर किया है, जैसे हम ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज कोर्सेरा से करते हैं या एडेक्स से करते हैं, we may not know it, but there are ways in which we can acquire that because lot of information is available today in the open domain. So don't discourage, but this is a possibility and we need to, as faculty, inform them, make them aware that this is the risk. Don't discourage them as such. Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
We can go forward with today's session. Let me first come to the idea of outcome-based education. Now, this is not a new thing. It is something that has there. Those who are students of education will know that we have always said that learning should be outcome-based in terms of identifying what skills or knowledge the student acquires. I am doing a course in sociology. I am learning about Indian society. आउटकम ये कहना है कि हर एक चैप्टर के लिए और हर एक कोर्स के लिए इससे पढ़ाई करने के बाद व्हाट डू यू अचीव, कैन आई अंडरस्टैंड एंड डिफाइन सोसाइटी. दे आर डिस्क्रिप्टर्स, दे आर क्लियर, quantifiable, identifiable descriptors. So for any course we should have learning outcome. So the first thing is, what outcome does that learner acquire by having learned a course? Let it be physics, let it be economics, let it be language, any subject, there are outcomes. For your benefit, the UGC has already brought out for 100 courses the learning outcome based curriculum framework. So you try and do a mapping. Maybe your curriculum does not be exactly the same as what the LOCF of the UGC is, because every university is free to make modifications in the broad framework of that curricula. So the syllabi might not exactly match that, but you will be able to identify the principles that go beyond that. So even in your own syllabi, when you make, I told you last time, making a lesson plan. Why in a school education a lesson plan is very important is because certain things we teach, certain things we do, certain things we expect the learners to do, and that is how activities are brought out. So learning outcomes is the first level when we talk of outcome-based education. The second is the program outcome. That is course outcome, before going to program, the course outcomes. First is the learning outcome of a specific topic that we teach. For a given course, what is the course outcomes that we are looking at? Then the program outcomes. Bachelors of Arts seek rahe ho, Bachelors of Science seek rahe ho. Even if that nomenclature is not there, they are specializing in subjects which come under arts domain or are multidisciplinary. Therefore, two domains together, both arts and maybe science, or arts and commerce, or arts and engineering, or arts and pharmacy, whatever. You need to identify for every level. And mind you, this is not something new. Just try and visit any of the websites of some of the foreign universities. When you go down to the course, they will tell you, having completed this course, what you are capable of taking up as a job. What is the employability options that you get by completing that course? Whether you can be a sociologist, whether you can do statistical studies for social surveys, whether you can take up jobs related to, let us say, forecasting, social forecasting, and many things that happen within the society related to gender or related to many other aspects. So there is a clear stipulation. Having done a course, what are first the options that are available in the open market, which are directly related to jobs, or what it helps for further study, or what it helps in terms of research, or what it helps in overall understanding of something that happens in the world of knowledge. This part is your course outcomes. And obviously, what you say of a course outcome has direct bearing on the program outcomes. So you are telling that in a program, whether it is specializing in a certain area of arts or science or commerce or engineering or medicine, these are the various options that you have which are linked to that. Then there are program educational objectives. So when you look at program outcomes, you also need to look at the program educational objectives. What does that educational objectives? So there you may not have relationship to employment, but the educational objectives would be further study, further research, further interdisciplinary study, further development of some product or publication. These could be within the program educational objectives. Now, as teachers in higher education, we have unfortunately not been sort of exposed to looking at outcome-based education. And that is the reason why when we hear statements that our graduates are not employable, our graduates need to be trained altogether again for taking up a job, they don't have communication skills, they don't have collaborative skills. When we say these statements arise because we have not followed an outcome-based education. And accountability, you may not like to hear this, but accountability of higher education faculty is at an absolutely low level. If I were to ask myself as a teacher in higher education, where are my students today? Even as I complete teaching, at that time we were teaching first year, second year, third year BA students. But if I complete that, where did my students who specialized in BA in political science, honors in political science, where are they 2 years after they completed the course? None of us know that because we don't track them. So this is a major fault in higher education. We are as much accountable to the final product of the student and what they are doing after having completed their studies. In school education, since performance of a school teacher is linked to the performance in their class 10 and class 12 board examinations, there is a direct accountability of results, student performance, and therefore the teacher performance. That is not there in higher education. And that is precisely what in the NEP we are talking in terms of accountability of higher education faculty. That as faculty, my role is not limited to 20 working hours that I spend per week. What did those 20 working hours in a week that I spend cumulatively over a period of an academic year actually result in enhancing that student's knowledge, giving them the kind of skills that are necessary, and making them what we call productive individuals. That is where outcome-based education becomes important. Now, we have now realized this, and major studies are now taking place where we are trying to do two things. One is the student satisfaction survey, what kind level of satisfaction they achieved having completed a course. And the second is a survey, which is a longitudinal survey spread out over 10 to 15 years, trying to track where the higher education students who pursued different programs, where have they gone in terms of jobs, setting up their own enterprise, working on a research project, taking up a career. What is it that they have got? This can be possible if we as faculty hold ourselves equally responsible like school teachers for the academic performance and achievement levels of our students. The best way to do that is to be very specific in terms of your outcomes. So when you go for a class to teach a subject, let us start doing a new exercise. Let us start saying that at the end of this class, this is what the student should have achieved. Understanding of a concept, applying that concept to a problem, to be able to translate that into a world of work, put some descriptors which are very explicit, that this is what they would have achieved in terms of the outcomes that we are looking at. They can calculate something. These are all clear descriptors. If you are not, even if you are not from education, and as someone who was part of the integrated teacher education program and the national professional standard for teachers that we are bringing out for school sector, look at the draft NPST document, which should be there in public domain. In NPST, we are talking about 3 levels of teachers for schools: the beginner, the intermediate, and the expert. And this is only in terms of having acquired certain skills to move from a beginner level to an intermediate level and then to a expert level. Here we are in higher education, we are only, see, for school teachers, they will say untrained graduate teacher or a trained graduate teacher or an untrained postgraduate teacher, which is very less, or a trained postgraduate teacher. This is the 3 nomenclatures that they use. So moment they complete their B.Ed and they start taking up teaching in a school, they are absolutely at the beginning level. Their practice teaching lessons were a part of their teacher education program when they were doing their B.Ed. When they start teaching in an actual school, they are at the beginner level. Now, at the beginner level, what are those skills and qualities and competencies that a teacher has to acquire? We have laid that out in specific descriptors. That is why I am asking you, so that you can also take from those descriptors the terms that we have used. It is not terms like describe, explain, and so on. It is actual understanding of certain things which will help them to do something. So use that so that you can follow those kind of terminologies which relate to competencies, which relate to skills, which relate to cognitive knowledge, which relate to actual experiential part of it, which also relate to values of sensitivity to gender, constitution, other values that we talk about, honesty and so on, which is also man building, which is also individual building. This is all part of it. So when we talked about the 4-year program, I told you common courses, digital skills, research skills, Indian knowledge systems, sensitivity to gender, sensitivity to children with disabilities, sensitivity to climate, to environment, and so on. So my simple advice to you is that if we break down what we are going to teach in terms of outcomes, something that Seema was also asking, if we break that down, then children who seem to be normally having a lot of difficulty in certain subjects actually get eased out, because those descriptors help the student, descriptors help us, and therefore we both come on a same level, that the student says this is what I need to acquire, this is what the teacher says I am trying to impart to you, using activities, or maybe giving them a group discussion, or giving them a quiz, or asking them to go to a lab and do something, or go to a studio, go to the field, whatever. You have multiple, obviously by that method, you will start deploying many ways in which that pedagogy has to be articulated. So that is where someone had asked me in the last session that हमें syllabus cover करने के लिए ही, Shalini I think had asked me that we don't have time, because, or Vijay Kumar had asked me that. It is not that 3 hours teaching, 2 hours research, no, all those things don't come into picture, because you are there as an assistant professor for, let us say, a given subject. These are the subjects that have been assigned to me by the college as my workload. For the subjects that I am teaching, I am going to start teaching in a manner where I identify what are the topic related outcomes, that is the learning outcomes of a given topic, the outcomes related to a course, what are the educational objectives of that entire program, because we are talking about the programs becoming multidisciplinary, so you need to talk with other faculty to identify program educational objectives. Till now, we don't talk to other faculty. Maximum you talk to your own faculty in the same department. From now on, you will have to start talking to other faculty, because your own students may have taken a combination with science or commerce or pharmacy or agriculture, so you need to start talking to them. So this exercise will make it easier to move towards what we call a very robust learning, which results in better performance of the students, firstly better outcomes leading to performance, achievement levels, and therefore you also as a teacher, if you want to track these students where they have gone after they completed your course, you will be able to see that also. So higher education faculty, and in induction programs like this that you are undergoing, we are trying to actually make you aware that the business of teaching as it was done earlier and what you have been doing so far has to undergo a change. And that has to undergo a change in this direction. This is a very easy method by which you become more clear as to what you need to teach, how you need to teach. Because let me be very clear, we deal with different faculty. Seema may be teaching in a manner, Shakila may be teaching in another manner, Shalini may be teaching in another manner, Vijay Kumar may be teaching in another manner. But if the entire framework remains the same, in the sense I'm not talking of uniformization or homogenization, it is against the idea of that. The framework is the same. The objectives of that are varying depending on the discipline. The style in which I teach may be varying across teachers. But the outcomes that they need to achieve, whether it is the manner in which Vijay Kumar taught or Shakila taught or Shalini taught or anybody else taught, the outcomes are the benchmarks that we need to set to see ourselves. So then when you take a student satisfaction, and if you are capable of actually getting a student feedback, which you must do, you can ask the student itself. See, in the school education, we brought out the idea of a holistic progress card, a 360-degree progress card from class 1 going on up to class 12, completely over the years. You track the students year-wise in terms of many aspects. You also try and understand the satisfaction level of the students. In higher education, we are only talking of feedback or progress cards in terms of the internal assessment marks or grades, and the final examination grades, of which you don't even know what is happening. You only know about the internal assessment. Here we are asking for the first time that you also do a 360-degree feedback. What kind of 360? You assess as a faculty, get peers to assess them, students them. You also get yourself assessed by speaking to the students and getting a feedback. What do I have to change? Please understand one thing. You are getting a product who is almost 18 years of age. And I don't know whether I told this to you earlier or not. That age is very important. An 18-year-old girl can get married, and an 18-year-old also exercise the right to vote. In a democratic country, exercising the right to vote is one of the most important rights that we can recognize. What is that person doing? This person is making a decision. I cast my vote in favor of someone whom I think is capable of ruling us well. No one casts vote for someone who cannot rule. What is that decision? The decision in forming the government of the day. Whether it is local government, whether it is state level government, or whether it is national level government. Such a student is capable of making considered decisions. So respect your learner. You must respect your learner. And I'm not saying because he is only an 18-year-old or she's an 18-year-old. Any student, how young, you must be able to respect, capable of thinking independently. Therefore, when you are seeking a feedback on your own methods of teaching, they may not tell that pedagogical style alag hai or whatever. They'll say, madam, samajh mein nahi aa raha hai, ya aapki bhasha bahut मतलब डिफिकल्ट है समझने के लिए, या आप हमें कुछ क्लास नोट्स दे दीजिए. बहुत सारे चीज जो हम शायद सोच भी नहीं पाएंगे ये बताएंगे, या फिर बोलेंगे कि कुछ एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज में हमें इन्वॉल्व करवा दीजिए. जो भी है, आप ओपन माइंड से प्लीज थिंक दैट ईच वन ऑफ अस एट एनी स्टेज आर ओपन टू करेक्शन एंड वी आर लर्निंग टू बिकम बेटर. सो don't think because you are standing 2 feet higher than the student, you know it all. In which case, as I said, you should not be teaching at all. Because a teacher is also learning all throughout. Every experience is a learning experience. So this outcome-based education will actually mean what we are saying very commonly, learner-centered education. We are seeing this, many words we are going on using. For the last 10 years, I'm hearing people saying, we are shifting from teacher-centered learning to learner-centered learning. What is learner-centered learning? Learner is not deciding the entire curriculum, because that stage we have not reached. At least we are not mature to reach that stage. There are countries where curriculum is framed, taking into account students' views also. But we have not reached that. We have a set curricula from which a syllabi is drawn. So when you say learner-centered, it is in terms of actual learning process and related to the outcomes, which is directed, learner-directed. That is when we say it is learner-centric. Any word, just because it is there, we cannot say. NEP says that we have to move towards learner-centered learning. Or जब आप outcome-based देखते ही नहीं हो, then it is not learner-centered. You can tell anything, you can shout from the rooftops, but it is not outcome based, then it is not learner centered. So this is where I want each one of you to introspect, to empower yourselves, go through the LOCF, go through the NPST, look at those descriptors. Before you teach a topic, you work out a lesson plan. It means little bit of homework. If you are not doing that currently, you need to start doing that, because it will be a very gratifying and fulfilling experience when many of your students whom you thought are not having the capability start performing better. So move towards that is my first mantra to you to become effective teachers. The second important part that I would like to cover today is in terms of the use of technology in education. So the fact that we are living in the 21st century, I told you that in my very first session, is the fact that we have moved towards the use of the computers and the internet. And the University Grants Commission has also said that we will give credits to students who are doing more than 40, who are doing up to 40% of their credits through online mode. So it goes without saying that the importance of technology in education is something that we all fundamentally must recognize. ये जानना बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है कि आज के दिन में शिक्षा लर्निंग ट्रांजैक्शन के लिए टेक्नोलॉजी यूज करना बहुत महत्वपूर्ण हो गया है। अभी हम जो बात कर रहे हैं, आप अलग अलग अपने घरों में बैठे हुए या ऑफिस में बैठे हुए या कॉलेज में बैठे हुए एक सेशन अटेंड कर रहे हो थैंक्स टू टेक्नोलॉजी। ऑनलाइन टीचिंग जो हम कर रहे हैं आज के दिन में, जिसमें आपको ये सुविधा मिला है, जहां पे आप है वहीं पे टेक्नोलॉजी आपको लेके आ रहा है दूसरे फैकल्टी को कांटेक्ट करने के लिए, रिसोर्स पर्सन से बात करने के लिए, और अगर ये लैब बेस्ड है तो हर एक पर्सन के पास एक कंप्यूटर होगा जिसमें एक्सरसाइज भी करते हुए रिसोर्स पर्सन को भी देख सकते हैं कि क्या कर रहे हैं। इस लेवल पे हम पहुंच गए हैं। टेक्नोलॉजी का बहुत सारे एडवांटेजेस है, लेकिन हमारे नेशन में जब कोविड आया था, हमने जब ऑनलाइन टीचिंग के लिए चले गए थे, तब हमें बहुत सारी चीज समझ में भी आ गया कि इट इज नॉट सो इजी टू डू ऑनलाइन टीचिंग। यू नीड सर्टेन स्किल्स टू डू ऑनलाइन टीचिंग। अब समझो, इंस्टेड ऑफ लेट अस से टॉकिंग, आई कीप अ रिकॉर्डेड video message, you will not find it interesting because you want synchronous interaction कि जब मैं हाथ उठाता हूं तो कोई मेरा उत्तर दे। This kind of using online technology for enriched learning, and when you're dealing with students, I am dealing with equals because I am also a teacher, you are also a teacher, we are all equals, so that becomes very different. This is not a class. This is something where you are being empowered through experience of someone to talk on a topic to understand that topic better. But when you are teaching students, the kind of skills you require are completely different. You are a teacher, no doubt, and they are students. Their information level is not as much as yours. Here, I cannot say that. Your information level is as good as mine. It is only that you do not know what the national education policy is. Therefore, I am giving you some knowledge or learnings about what that NEP is. So in your own discipline of sociology or political science or Sanskrit or Hindi or English or home science or whatever you teach, you are experts in that field. That is not the case when you are using online teaching of students. So here, to use online teaching, the need for a lot of training is very, very important. How do you do that in an effective manner? So when we said that 40% of credits can be done through MOOCs, it is through the Swayam courses. They are all there on the Swayam platform. You can have a look at all those courses, visit the Swayam website, and you can see a series of courses that are available there. Those courses have got built-in activities, which is for internal assessment. Those courses have got end of the term examination also. So moment a student completes a Swayam course, the assumption is that all the credits required for that course have been acquired because all aspects of curricular inputs and assessment have been completed by the student. But as a teacher, you will say, मैं तो कॉलेज में जा रही हूँ और रोज सिखा रही हूँ, तो क्यों मुझे टेक्नोलॉजी की जानकारी होनी चाहिए? No, because students आज के दिन में टेक्नोलॉजी में बहुत आगे निकल गए हैं. I have made this statement earlier also to you. None of your students are born in the previous century. They are all born in this century. And what is the peculiarity of this century is that they were born with the mobiles, they were born with high-speed internet, and they were born with gadgets that talk to them on a one-to-one basis. And they feel very comfortable using technology. whereas you and I are not very comfortable using technology. We are learning it on the job. Therefore, training how to make teaching online more effective, that is where even in your own subject, you must try blended models of teaching. Now, there are teachers here who may be coming from rural areas where availability of high speed bandwidth and all may be a limitation. But using technology, giving them certain things to be done on a computer, and what I said in the common courses, digital skills. तो आप एक assignment जो आप internal assessment में देना चाहते हैं, you must tell them कि ये assignment आप मुझे सिर्फ ईमेल से ही भेजोगे और आप उसी में टाइप करते हुए आप मुझे भेजोगे. That way what happens, the student learns to use a technology. I'm giving a very fun, very rudimentary, elementary level of an exercise. But blended models of teaching is what we are moving towards. And that, of course, we became, I would say, COVID in a certain sense was an enabler because we started learning how to use that. But we also realized at that time that using technology in a nation where individual preparedness, both student and teacher, institutional preparedness, the technical know-how of the back-end people who manage that, all were at a very low level. Now we have learned that. We have become more professional and qualified to do that. So experience of using technology, thanks to COVID, got accelerated, speed up हो गया, because there was no other option. तो हमने start करना, use करना किया. हमें जानकारी नहीं थी, लेकिन हमने किसी भी तरह से, क्योंकि सब that was a crisis time where people were working from home. All of us were confined to home. Our children were studying at home. We were teaching online. Our spouses are also doing their work at home. This was a kind of a situation where we say, na, in every crisis, there is an opportunity. That is what that opportunity threw up. So that crisis actually challenged our capabilities and we became technologically accelerated to use that. Now, acceptance of the use of technology, that you are sitting in a college, you want to get a Nobel laureate to take a class. You can do that because of technology. So quality of education, getting the best resource persons, getting the best faculty, getting the best experts to talk on various subjects and integrating that into your classes becomes very important. So एक class में अगर आपको technology दिखाना है, आप किसी भी विषय में जो बहुत ही माहिर है उस विषय में, कोई भी प्रोफेसर हो या बहुत ही एक्सपर्ट हो, उनका एक टॉक आप आइडेंटिफाई कीजिए यूट्यूब से. जब आप क्लास में जाओगे, आपके पास स्मार्ट बोर्ड है और प्रोजेक्टर है, तो आप उसको प्रोजेक्ट करके बच्चों को 10 मिनट, डोंट हैव टू पे द होल थिंग, आप एग्जैक्टली अबाउट 10 मिनट्स you use that. Don't substitute your class for that. I am only saying कि जो भी एक बहुत important concept जो आप बच्चों तक लेके आना चाहते हैं या कोई डेवलपमेंट लेके आना चाहते हैं, so you just show about 10 minutes of that, then you come back to the discussion. What will happen is you have started following blended models of teaching and learning. So technology helps in a very major way. जहां पे इंटरनेट नहीं है या जहां पे हर एक स्टूडेंट के पास कंप्यूटर नहीं है, तो हमें कुछ और अरेंजमेंट्स देखने ही पड़ेंगे ताकि ये टेक्नोलॉजी का यूज उनको भी मिले. अब जैसे केरल जैसे स्टेट में वेयर आई एम करंटली लोकेटेड, there are certain very backward districts which are tribal dominated in Wayanad and so far, where they don't have those digital devices. Individual digital devices being there for every student in a country like ours, you must accept will not be there. And so very few will have individual laptops and handheld devices, smartphones and so on. But you cannot create a digital divide and start looking at students differently between the digital haves and the digital have-nots. As a teacher, how will you address those students who are not having the digital devices through sharing, through giving them access by use of, let us say, common devices, These are all strategies which become a part of both managerial decisions in an institution. But you should not shy away from using technology because you do not know. If you do not know as a teacher, get yourself trained, get yourself exposed to how you can start using technology. So technology in education, most importantly, is for enhancing and, let us say, enriching the learning experience. The second is for data management. As I already said, many of the administrative tasks can be taken up through the use of technology and putting in, let us say, standard operating procedures, which are sort of streamlined procedures, and therefore data management makes it very important. The third advantage of technology is that everything should be there in public domain. It is available in open websites for anyone to access. What is my NAC rating? What is my NIRF ranking? What are the departments I have? Who are the faculty there? What is the qualifications of these faculty? Who is the managerial persons over there? What are the academic programs? Everything must be there, so that under the Right to Information Act, whatever is being asked for is there. We are living in a time where, as citizens, we are right to know certain things. And we are living in a time where, even though we have the right to know, we should not enter into areas which are driven by the right of privacy. So this delicate balance is very essential. But having said that, using technology in higher education institutions is a method by which overall the institutional performance efficiency improves, because data management, the basic information, and the teaching learning processes, quality, quantity, equity is all taken care of. And the last factor is accountability. Accountability, because fair and transparent processes help you to see that things are streamlined for anyone to ask, question, account, and audit. These kind of things, so that if an institution, let us say admission, you give one-page advertisement in Hindustan Times or any Hindi newspaper, you give an advertisement that you have all these. Then you go to the website, you see that these are really not there. It is just fooling the people. So you will see, and when I was in Delhi and I've traveled through that stretch between Delhi to Haryana and so on, huge gates of institutions. But when you enter in, you realize the infrastructure is not there. That is fooling people. So once you have everything in public domain, and it is there, taking a virtual tour of the campus, what are the hostel facilities, what are the departments, what are the lab facilities, library that is there, what are the qualifications of the faculty, what are the non-teaching staff looking at, technical staff looking at, the fair and transparent processes. You put up your yearly accounts, you put up your annual report, you put up all your strategic plan of action or IDP, all this is there in public domain. It brings about a very heightened sense of accountability of the higher education institution. So technology is a tool to ensure quality of teaching and learning, ensure better management and administration, and ensure that data is well managed for bringing about. Why is data important? Data is important so that you understand your own shortcomings, and then you can sort of improve upon it. And finally, for bringing about accountability. Now, the NEP 2020 has said public and private institutions will be driven by the same set of norms and regulations. So when you put all institutions, whether they are public funded or whether they are privately run, all of them, when they follow the same standard procedures, you bring about a very fair playing ground, where once you have the Higher Education Commission of India, you want to shut down institutions. Yes, Pratima, we'll take up questions at the end of the session. You want to shut down an institution. We have written that in the policy. We have written that if institutions start charging exorbitant fees, do not follow the requirements of scholarships and free ships, do not convert to become multidisciplinary by 2030, then we can take penal action. Those who are fake institutions, those who are not following the norms and guidelines of the University Grants Commission or any other regulator, action can be taken. Punitive action can be taken against them. Stringent punitive action. For all that, technology and having open systems where people can see and people can make their own assessment of an institution's credibility can all be taken on ground. I'd request all participants to bear with me for another 15 minutes and we'll open up the questions so that I complete what I intended to cover. Having said this about technology, I would also like to say that we have two chapters on technology in education, chapter 23 and chapter 24. The chapter 24 talks in terms of how preparedness to use technology, which is missing and which was missing at the time in March 2020 when COVID affected us, has to be sort of looked at through concerted efforts. Whereas for teachers, it is by training. For learners, they don't have much. They actually adapt very fast. In fact, they go beyond and adapt much faster than us. Parents, because they start thinking, बच्चे तो class में जा नहीं रहा है, यहाँ पे घर पे बैठ के पढ़ाई कर रहा है. They don't understand that learning can happen through technology. Sensitizing parents. And above all, the digital infrastructure in the institutions, be they in schools or colleges or university. So we have actually, in the last 3 years, our digital public infrastructure, because of where you are using all your financial transactions and so on, actually has improved a lot. A lot of common services of citizens, whether it is registration of births and deaths and so many things, ration card application, driving license, whatever, all this is now become streamlined because of the digital public infrastructure. And even in education, the need for having strong digital infrastructure, which is a part of the ICT infrastructure in the educational institutions, and ensuring proper running and maintenance of it with all the troubleshooting to be taken care of on a very sustained long-term basis has been put in place. For that, the NEP recognized one intervention, both for education and to ensure that. So I mentioned about Swayam and so on, online courses and all that, to ensure that there is not much of duplicity and reinventing the same wheel, putting it in a coordinated manner so that all the resources are optimized. We have created what we call a National Education Technology Forum. NETF has been created. You can have a look at the site by which it is maintained by the All India Council for Technical Education, and you have a look at the NETF site. It ensures that there is a coordinated approach. So there are programs, online courses that are there by the CEC, there is courses by the Swayam, then there are courses that AICT is driving, many other courses by IGNOU and many other bodies which are there. All these courses, we should not start making the same course again and again, so that you are actually using both human infrastructural and technological infrastructure in the optimum manner possible, using all the human, technical, technological and infrastructural resources to optimize the number of programs, rather than CEC is offering the same course, IGNOU is offering the same course, and the Swayam is offering the same course. Not necessary. Then you create a confusion for students. So which are those courses, which are those uncovered areas on which online courses should be created? To look into these aspects, the NETF has been created, where you can see this on the AICTE portal. Now, the importance of, I have talked about the importance of technology. Now let me come to internationalization. Internationalization is a very, very major thrust that we have given in NEP. Currently, under the existing system, we are talking of faculty exchange programs, we are talking of student exchange programs, which is a part of the normal part of our internationalization. You can go for maybe 2 semesters to teach outside or to teach a course. These are all faculty exchange or student exchange programs which are ongoing. What we have done is that we wanted mobility in 2-3 ways, not just the faculty mobility and the student mobility. We also thought about the academic mobility in terms of the credits that the students earn and institutional mobility. What is the academic mobility? The UGC's guidelines that was brought out way back in 2020 itself on internationalization of higher education talks of 4 major things. One, that we would like India to become a global destination to attract a number of foreign students coming into our country. Currently, almost 7.5 lakh students from India go outside for their higher education. And the number of foreign students coming here are a minuscule 40,000 students. For a country which wants to become a Vishwa Guru and to become a universal destination point for foreign students, these are absolutely low numbers. So we set a strategy how to attract foreign students to come over here. Majorly, what we realize is that students face a lot of problems in terms of adapting to our culture, our ways of living, our language, mobility, transportation facilities, hostel accommodation, staying arrangements, food, and so on. So we said all higher education institutions are encouraged to set up an international students office to attract foreign students and have a one-stop window for sorting out all their issues, starting from their visa issues to their stay arrangements, to their local transportation, to their food arrangements, and so on. To look at all this, at least to make them aware that these are the things. If I'm in Varanasi, what is it? If I'm in Hyderabad, what is it? If I'm in Bombay, what is it? If I'm in Kalimpong in West Bengal, what is it? If I'm in the Northeast in some part, what is it? If I'm in South India, what is it? Each place, see, in other countries, you don't have this kind of diversity. In our country, different regions have different diversities. We all accept that, and that is something. We are rich in our diversity. We are proud to be having that diversity. But for a foreigner, India is one. But when they come here, they realize that it's not really one, it's multiplicity of things. Therefore, an international students office is very critical to ensure that foreign students easily adapt to the Indian situations, depending upon which local context they are. This will help attracting a lot of foreign students. Second, we should be able to offer programs. They may not come here for learning BA in English or learning something else. They may be interested in taking up, let us say, a lot of new languages which are not spoken outside but are available here. Or they may like Indian architecture, or they may like Indian Ayurvedic systems, or they may like Indian yoga, or some other Indian traditional knowledge systems. So we should have courses which can attract these students to come over here. Dance forms, music forms, so many things that India is so rich. Food for that matter, the entire food science sector, the whole of the Western world and the European world like Indian food. Whether there would be interested people who can take up such kind of courses here. So these are what we need to do, a need assessment and offer courses. We need not, as I said right at the beginning, it's not one size fits all. Every institution can decide what they have, what are the faculty, what are the local resources, and try and see we can get those students over here. In addition to this, we are talking about 3 kinds of arrangements for academic mobility or credit mobility of students. We are talking about joint degrees, dual degrees, and twinning programs. Twinning programs are the least modified because you are twinning 2 programs together in such a way that students are completing a certain number of courses in some other university which is outside the country. Dual degrees, where they get 2 different degrees from an Indian university and from a foreign university in related areas. Let us say I take up foreign trade along with, let us say, economics. So I get a degree of economics along with foreign trade from, there are 2 degrees from that are given jointly by both the universities. Then there is a joint degree where 1 semester may be completely done outside and you have the degree being given jointly signed by the competent authorities of both the universities. Have a look at the UGC guidelines. So I have just made you aware that this is one mechanism where we should be able to encourage our own students to take up these kind of facilities, and at the beginning make our own institutions also think. So for you as a faculty, you can try and understand what are those areas in which, if your department is very strong, professor se leke assistant associate professor or assistant professor, hey, so can we think of offering a joint degree in my discipline along with another university? Take it up with your dean and your managing and your management. So also the dual degrees, which are also, and have a look at these guidelines. You will then find it very sort of opening of opportunity for you to also start looking at. Of course, this is over and above what we have, the Government of India schemes of Spark, Gyan Plus, and so on, which are for research collaboration, which is for attracting foreign students from foreign countries, study in India program. There are specific funding that is provided by the Government of India. Now, having said all this, the overarching goal that we are looking at is to internationalize higher education. And that is where the entry of foreign universities into India is something that we have now thought about. So right from about 10-15 years, we were talking about allowing foreign universities to establish. This is institutional mobility, okay? I talked about student mobility, faculty mobility, credit mobility or academic mobility. Now I'm coming to institutional mobility, allowing foreign universities to set up their campuses. So the NEP said the top 100 in the global rankings, but the UGC's regulation, draft regulation, which was out in the month of, I think, April or so, talked in terms of the top 500 universities. But they will be allowed to set up their campuses here, clear regulations. So also our Indian universities can set up their campuses outside. So this entire, what I may say, scenario is changing. Now over here, many said by allowing foreign universities, you are actually creating an unfair competition. Let me tell you, competition is not a bad word. Competition, competitiveness are all positive words. When we denationalized banks and allowed a lot of private sector banks to come, at that time also we have heard this. Any competition, as long as you follow the rules of the game and you provide a level playing field and you do not discriminate between Indian institutions and foreign institutions, is a healthy competition. We should be up to it. Any competition that comes stretches our excellence benchmarks and we try to excel in that field. Competition leads to better quality, always. Provided, as I said, with a rider, it should be by the rules of the game. Those rules of the game should apply uniformly. You cannot keep changing the rules of the game, and you should not discriminate a local institution in a relation to a foreign university. This, as long as you do. Now, other things, many of our good faculty will leave and join that. These are all things that come about, and you have to deal with that. It is rather not, we have 40% vacancies in faculty, we will have more vacancies. We need to ensure that so many people pass the UGC NET. There are so many PhD holders. Where have they gone? Why have they not come into teaching? These are the ways in which we should try and address it. So on internationalization, this major changes are there. Have a look at the draft have a look at the UGC final regulations for internationalization and also the draft regulations for entry of foreign education providers. The last point that I would like to touch upon is on the importance of language in higher education. The NEP has made out a very strong case for multilingualism and talked about mother tongue education in school education. And we have said that because of empirical evidence which tells us that children learn languages best between the ages of 2 and 8. And the more languages children learn, the more their cognitive skills get enhanced. There is a direct correlation between learning of languages and cognitive development. And in a country like ours, which is home to 200 languages and 600 dialects, and a number of languages which are sort of dying out. The importance of language and the plurality of that language needs to be something we recognize, we strengthen, and we develop. What better place to do that than our higher education institutions? So in the chapter that we wrote on language, we have talked about the strengthening, the promotion, strengthening, and development of languages through our higher education institutions, which can talk in terms of creating more language departments. We can also talk in terms of, let us say, understanding the importance of language to culture, language to knowledge systems, Indian knowledge systems, and developing these languages so that they reach an international stature. And many foreign students would be attracted to language because it is closely interlinked to cultural forms. And as individuals also, it is a very enriching experience if we know multiple languages. So for that, we have encouraged that. And have a look at, we are having a national mission for translation and interpretation. We are offering higher education in regional languages. So all your textbooks and your reference material are getting translated. We are saying that we will set up institutes for classical languages like Pali, Prakrit, and Persian. We already have a lot of other institutions for some of the other classical languages. So a lot is being done for the promotion and strengthening of language. The last point I'll touch upon is the reforms in teacher education. Currently, teacher education is done through a 2-year B.Ed program, which is in an individual standalone institution. We have realized that higher education, teacher education should be a part and parcel of higher education, and that integrated teacher education programs of BA B.Ed, BSc B.Ed, BCom B.Ed, BVoc B.Ed is integral to having robust teacher education programs where teachers who are going to teach in schools understand the subjects of physics, chemistry, mathematics if it is BSc B.Ed, understand social sciences and languages if it is BA B.Ed, commerce, basic subjects, and then the B.Ed part, so that that teacher education also subscribes to NEP's requirement of integrated multidisciplinary education. And that is the reform, which is the only reform in which we have said that by 2030 we will shut down standalone teacher education institutions. They must either collaborate with other multidisciplinary institutions, but firstly, they must move towards integrated teacher education 4-year programs, which are BA B.Ed or BSc B.Ed and so on. So we've given a long rope, and we hope that this reform will greatly improve the quality of school education. And let me stop by trying to say, NEP looked at education as if it is one organic whole, as if there is a continuum between the different sectors of education. So the connections and the connect between school education and higher education, which has been missing, is something that we would like to bring about. And that is where I said the holistic multidisciplinary education really starts from class 6, where we are removing all these so-called divisions of curricular, extracurricular, co-curricular, and so on. That is going into higher education, bringing about a connect of teacher education with higher education, strengthening of vocational education. So a lot of connect, and in the extension, basically we would like to see higher education institutions nurturing the schools around it. So that kind of a connect, that we are in a university, what a school hai, kya dekhna hai? No, you must understand the school and higher education are dealing with the business of teaching and learning, and that these same school students are the ones who are going to come to you. And therefore, we encourage closer connect through a lot of activities that you can do with schools in your area. That will create a more learning society, a more knowledgeable society. Let me stop here. Thank you very much. And let us take up questions for interaction.
Thank you, ma'am.
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 Raised
Thank
her
you,
hand.
ma'am.
Take her first.
Thank you,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ji, thank you very much for listening out to me. Let us hear Rumana's question.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, you mentioned about the learning outcome, course outcome, and program outcome. Ma'am, is there
Yes.
any method to calculate the particular sessions, course outcome, learning outcomes, and program outcomes? Is there any method?
No, we are not asking you to reinvent or do any method. There are already existing documents which tell you that. If you look at the UGC's learning outcome curriculum framework, for all the basic subjects, it is already there. So you don't have to do anything new for that. But what you need to understand in terms of if you want to create your own, I told you to read through the National Professional Standards for Teachers, where for a beginner teacher, for an intermediate teacher, and for an expert teacher, we have given descriptors of what the student should have acquired. On that basis, you can start framing your own if you would like to go about it. Of course, otherwise, as education, you must look at the Bloom's taxonomy and so on. So let me not suggest something which is very difficult. What is already there, please refer to that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Someone else had
Thank
raised
you,
their
ma'am.
hand in between. Somebody, Dharmendra, if I'm not mistaken. Do you still have a question or did it get sorted out? Okay, Samar, you can ask your question.
No, ma'am.
Okay, you didn't have a question. Okay. So please, I would request you, if there are not many questions coming around, I have more or less covered the entire national education policy. You must read, having heard me now, please read through the NEP 2020 and don't read only higher education. Please read the entire document because there is a close connect between what we say in school education and in higher education. Also read all the entire policy document. It's only 66 pages and you are an educator. So you must be able to read it in its totality. Also read through all the UGC guidelines. I will repeat it once again on the 4-year program, transforming institutions into multidisciplinary institutions, multiple entry and exit, the 4-year curriculum framework, NHEQF, Academic Bank of Credit, National Credit Framework, internationalization of higher education, global citizenship education, teaching of Indian knowledge systems, curriculum and pedagogy, all these guidelines on the UGC's website, which are there. And I think if necessary, I can share a link. I think I had already shared it with Dr. Faiza, all the links to these guidelines. The latest one, of course, is on the entry of foreign education providers. So have a look at these guidelines because then you will get an idea and don't have to read it in one go, but start reading them so that you get empowered over a period of time. So Vijay Kumar
I
and
have one
Purha
question.
have raised their hands.
Dr. Vijay Kumar, I have one question, ma'am.
Yeah, sure.
मैम स्कूल एजुकेशन में भी कहा गया है कि कैरियर काउंसलिंग करने के लिए, तो वहाँ पे किस तरह काउंसलिंग करें? क्योंकि अभी तो वो मैट्रिक पास किया है, अभी तो कुछ जॉब के लायक उसका डिग्री हुआ नहीं है, तो वहाँ कैसे कैरियर काउंसलिंग कराई जाए?
विजय कुमार जी, एक्चुअली काउंसलिंग हम स्कूल से ही शुरू करना चाहिए क्योंकि बच्चों में क्लैरिटी लेके आना है कि ये विषय सीखने से वो आगे जाके क्या कर सकते हैं। उसी हिसाब से वो जो बड़ा जब हायर एजुकेशन में आ जाएंगे वो विषय को अगर लेना चाहते हैं, अब लेट मी गिव यू अ सिंपल एग्जांपल। हम स्कूली शिक्षा में ये सोचते हैं कि जो पेरेंट्स बताए वही बच्चा करना चाहिए, और ज्यादातर हमारी जो स्टूडेंट सुसाइड होती है जिसमें पेरेंट्स बच्चों को अपने मर्जी से वो इंजीनियरिंग में बिठाते हैं जबकि वो बच्चे को मैथ्स का हो सकता है इतना स्ट्रेंथ नहीं है। उसी टाइम आप स्कूल में ही लेके आना चाहिए कि ये विषय सीखने से आप आगे जाते हुए हायर एजुकेशन पढ़ने के बाद क्या कर सकते हैं। यू डोंट हैव टू वेट टिल दे बिकम। लेट मी टेल यू, ऑल एप्टीट्यूड टेस्ट, स्टूडेंट का रुचि क्या है ये समझने के एप्टीट्यूड टेस्ट स्कूलों में लेके आना चाहिए। ताकि आप
उसमें तो मैम जितना जितना क्लास ऑलरेडी होती स्कूल में, तो उसमें एक क्लास बढ़ा दिया जाए एटलीस्ट के लिए। जो टीचर अवेलेबल है वही करियर काउंसलिंग करे, जो इकोनॉमिक्स
टीचर
एक्सपर्ट
इज
है,
नॉट द
मैथ्स
पर्सन हु
एक्सपर्ट
डज
है,
द काउंसलिंग, नो।
सोशल साइंस के हैं, सब कोई।
Counselors and teachers have to sit together to do the career counseling. The teacher who teaches the subject, along with the counselor who is having a qualification in psychology and in counseling, they sit together to do the career counseling. And all schools today have got academic counselors and also have got psychological counselors. Both are there today. ऑल सीबीएसई स्कूल्स और बहुत सारे स्टेट गवर्नमेंट भी लेके आए हैं, ये रेगुलर पोस्ट बन चुकी है। तो आप स्कूल में ही जब बच्चे 6 स्टैंडर्ड से लेके जो आ जाते हैं, उसी क्लास में आप ये सारे चीज लेके आना है, क्योंकि उसी टाइम बच्चों को सेंसिटाइज करना, ये नहीं है कि आपको बताना है बच्चों को सिर्फ सेंसिटाइज करना है कि ये आपका रुचि है और ये आप आगे जाके ये कर सकते हैं। Let me tell you, there are students, school students whom I speak to. They say they want to study about dinosaurs. So they will tell you they want to study about dinosaurs. What is that subject that I need to learn if I want to subsequently go and learn about it? और ये भी लेके आना चाहेंगे। बच्चों को बोल सकते हैं कि आज के दिन में आप YouTube देख रहे हैं तो इसलिए आपको डायनासोर पढ़ने में आपको लग रहा है कि शौक है। ये हो सकता है आपका शौक नहीं है, it is just an interest that you have. So you need to actually do counseling and more of aptitude test in the school sector. That is what wrong choices when they come into higher education, or choices forced by the parents when they don't have an aptitude, results in a mismatch. This can be corrected if you start it at the school stage. That is not when the child is 3 years or so, when the child is around 12 years of age. And please understand, आज के 12 years का बच्चा आप और मैं जैसे 12 years का बच्चा नहीं रहा है, वो बहुत एक्सपोज्ड है और उसको बहुत जानकारी है। तो आपका जो काउंसलिंग है जो आप लेके आ जाएंगे, वो मिडिल स्टेज में ही लेके आना है, ताकि ये बच्चों को एक आइडिया मिल जाए। ये नहीं है कि आप फोर्स करें या उनको sort of बताए कि नहीं आप ये नहीं सीख सकते हो। लाइक आई टोल्ड, आपको ये सेंसिटाइज करना है कि अगर आप ये विषय सीखेंगे तो आपको इस तरह से कमिटमेंट करना पड़ेगा, मेकिंग देम अवेयर। बट इसके बिफोर काउंसलिंग इंपॉर्टेंट इज टू डू एप्टीट्यूड टेस्ट। एक्चुअली वही एक चीज है जो हम क्लास मिडिल स्टेज में लेके आना चाहेंगे। मिडिल स्टेज में आप एक बार एप्टीट्यूड टेस्ट कराइए, बाद में जाके जब वो क्लास 9th में आ जाएंगे तब एक एप्टीट्यूड टेस्ट करिए। बहुत हो सकता है कि वो एप्टीट्यूड टेस्ट और जब क्लास 9th में करे, इसमें बहुत जिम्मेदारी बच्चे ये कंफ्यूज हो जाते हैं। पूनम देवी, प्लीज म्यूट योर माइक। पूनम, प्लीज म्यूट योर माइक। The difference of a class 6 students aptitude test as against a class 9 students aptitude test, you will see sometimes there is a lot of difference. हम लोग aptitude test कराते ही नहीं, और बिना aptitude test हम जब counseling लेके आते हैं, then you really do not get the right results. तो ये जो counselor मैंने जो बताया, ये जो MSc psychology वाला counselor है, they are having the expertise to do aptitude test. तो जब काउंसलिंग की बात कर रहे हैं, टीचर का काउंसलिंग वो प्योर एकेडमिक काउंसलिंग होती है। जो साइकोलॉजिकल टेस्ट करने हैं, जो एप्टीट्यूड टेस्ट है, वो दूसरे काउंसलर करेंगे। ये दोनों को साथ में लेते हुए, पेरेंट और स्टूडेंट को बुलाते हुए, ये सभी साथ में बैठते हुए, वी नीड टू वर्क आउट व्हाट शुड बी द काइंड ऑफ करियर काउंसलिंग। और ये हायर एजुकेशन में आने के बाद नहीं करना है, आपको मिडिल स्टेज ऑफ स्कूलिंग में ही लेके आना है। एक और बार आप सेकेंडरी स्टेज ऑफ स्कूलिंग में लेके आना है। तो ये गलत नहीं है विजय कुमार, ये सही मेथड है। क्योंकि
वो एप्टीट्यूड टेस्ट में वो लॉजिकल वर्बल नॉन रीजनिंग होगा या फिर साइकोलॉजी से रिलेटेड होगा या उसका मेंटल टेस्ट होगा, आईक्यू टेस्ट
इंक्लूडेड है। ये बहुत क्वालिटेटिव और क्वांटिटेटिव दोनों इंक्लूडेड है। यू हैव अ लुक। आप जैसे आप ये सेशन खत्म करते हैं, प्लीज हैव अ लुक, try aptitude tests for school children you will get a variety of those tests available itself in public domain.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, Ranju, please ask your question.
नमस्ते मैम, मेरा ये प्रश्न है कि जैसे हम लोग अभी नए हैं, 1 साल हुआ है ज्वाइन किए, हमारे जो सीनियर टीचर्स हैं हम उनके साथ कैसे, उनको कैसे तैयार करें? उनकी भी तो काउंसलिंग जरूरी है, वो इस तरह के कोर्स करते नहीं है और वो नई चीजों के लिए तैयार भी नहीं होते हैं।
नहीं, लेट मी टेल यू, ये आप रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी अपने आप के ऊपर मत लेके
मैम,
आइए।
बोला जाता है कि ये कल आई है कि हम लोगों को बताने लगी, वो IQAC हेड हैं, पर उन्हें कुछ बताना अगर हम जरूरी समझते हैं वो सुनते नहीं है, और जब उनको करना होगा उनका काम हमने देखा, अभी उनका प्रोफेसर का प्रमोशन था, उन्होंने अपना काम सिर्फ कागज कंप्लीट करने में सब लगे हैं, रियलिटी में तो कुछ होता ही नहीं है।
नहीं रंजू,
मैम,
इसमें एक
आई एम
चीज है।
एग्री विथ हर।
नहीं, विजय कुमार डोंट कम इन, विजय कुमार डोंट
मेरे
कम इन।
मेरे कॉलेज में मैम 5 स्मार्ट बोर्ड लगे हैं, मैंने इंस्टॉल करवाया। आई एम रूसा नोडल अफसर। तो जो सीनियर टीचर कोई क्लास नहीं लेते हैं, जो जूनियर टीचर जो हम लोग टाइप एज के हैं, ये लोग बहुत इंटरेस्टेड हैं, मजे से क्लास लेते हैं।
Let us not do fault finding. Let me tell both of you, Vijay Kumar and Ranju, two things. System takes care of certain things. अभी जैसे मदन मोहन मालवीय के मिशन के हिसाब से, आई कीप सेइंग मदन मोहन मालवीय, इट्स नो लॉन्गर मदन, वी ओनली से मालवीय मिशन ट्रेनिंग सेंटर्स. These are all to be driven by the IQAC cell. The IQAC cell has to take forward all these training programs. IQAC cell खुद बैठ के मैं नहीं करूंगी लेकिन मैं ट्रेनिंग कंडक्ट करूंगी, ये नहीं बोल पाएंगे. सिस्टम कुछ चीज अपने आप में सॉर्ट आउट हो जाएगा. अब जब हमने सीखा, when I started teaching, I am only saying it for an anecdotal experience. When I started teaching, my seniors may not have been teaching the way I taught. I could see that students relate to me because I'm much younger to them, almost their age, because I did not complete my PhD before I started teaching. So I completed my master's and immediately after doing MPhil, I started teaching. So just around 23. Students are around 18, 19. So they started seeing me like a friend. Whereas when the seniors went, chup beto, ye karo, wo karo, dictator ke jaise, हालांकि मेरा खुद का nickname Hitler था. That is another thing, because I don't compromise on discipline. I was called Hitler, and I take pride in the fact that discipline has to be there. But the fact remains that जो seniors किस तरह से करते हैं, हम कुछ चीज उनसे सीख सकते हैं, बट चेंज वो लोग लेके आने में बहुत टाइम लगती है. वो एजुकेशन सेक्टर में हो, कोई भी सेक्टर में हो, जो ट्रेडिशनल सर्जन है, डॉक्टर है, जो सर्जरी करता है, वो रोबोटिक सर्जरी नहीं एक्सेप्ट करेगा, क्योंकि ही प्रिफर्स द ट्रेडिशनल स्टाइल ऑफ सर्जरी. वो हर एक सेक्टर में होती है. एंड इट इज नॉट टू से दैट दे आर रॉन्ग, बिकॉज उनके टाइम में जो एक्सपोजर है. बट सिस्टम, एज फार एज ऑल द IQAC सेल्स and all the senior teachers आज के दिन में टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं यूज करेंगे, है ना. they will feel that टेक्नोलॉजी क्यों यूज करना है, मैं इतने साल से सिखा के लेके आ रहा हूँ, I am an expert in that field. But as I said, जिस दिन टीचर समझता है कि मुझे और कुछ सीखना नहीं है और मैं कुछ नहीं चेंज करूंगा, then that teacher obviously becomes irrelevant. स्टूडेंट खुद ही वो टीचर को एसोसिएट नहीं कर सकते. और ये जो चीज आप बोल रहे हैं कि पेपर वर्क करते हैं, ये हर एक एरिया में होती है. यू डोंट हैव टू वरी अबाउट दैट, वेदर इट इज
मैम जैसे अब वो लोग नए हैं मैम, जैसे अब हम ये कोर्स करके जा रहे हैं तो मुझे उसमें रखना चाहिए, हो सकता है मैं उनको कुछ नए आइडियाज दे पाऊं, लेकिन वो अपने सीनियरिटी के अकॉर्डिंग ही उनको उसमें रखेंगे, हमें उसमें ऐड ही नहीं किया जाएगा.
वो यही मैं बताना चाहती हूँ कि सबसे ज्यादा कास्ट हायरार्की, हमारी जो 4-fold कास्ट हायरार्की है, वो सबसे ज्यादा टीचिंग फ्रेटर्निटी में है. और ये समझते हैं कि क्योंकि वो सीनियर हो चुके हैं, वो जूनियर से नहीं सीख सकते. देयर रियलाइजेशन दैट देयर विल बी, नॉट ऑल ऑफ देम विल बी लाइक दैट, देयर विल बी वन और टू. अब आप कमिटी में अगर नहीं भी हो, द वर्ड ऑफ माउथ and the fact that your popularity increases as a faculty, gradually you will find that students will start, because students like you will find that acceptability will go on to the organization also. But don't run behind committees, don't run behind anything. If you have proved your worth, you will get recognized for that. That is the simple thing, that quality cannot remain hidden. Quality always shines through. That is the way you look at it. And everywhere you have all this politics, you have all this issues of the juniors being suppressed, lot of backbiting, lot of things. And हम academics तो उसमें माहिर हो गए, इतने माहिर हो गए हैं कि किसी और प्रोफेशन में इतना बैकबाइटिंग और बिकरिंग और पॉलिटिक्स जैसे होती है बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में नहीं होते। और वो एक
और मैम
बहुत ही
स्पेशली महिला महाविद्यालय में मैम स्पेशली कोएड में थोड़ा
महिलाएं,
कम
मैं
होता
तो
है।
पहले ही बताती हूँ, द ग्रेटेस्ट ऑप्रेसर ऑफ विमेन इज विमेन, whether it is the role of a mother or whether the role of a mother-in-law, whether it's the role of
यस
a
मैम,
daughter-in-law, women are
पैट्रियार्की मैम
oppressors of
महिलाओं से चल रही है, पुरुष तो ऐसे ही बदनाम है।
नहीं, कोई बात नहीं, let us not bring the gender dimension, but I personally believe that all gender related issues are procreated to a great extent by our own fraternity. Of course, men, I don't want to make any kind of a statement, but men are in a certain sense having certain limitations which women don't have, which women have. Multitasking, हम 10 सारी चीज एक साथ कर सकते हैं, मल्टीटास्किंग विमेन कर सकते हैं, but men do not have that ability. Men are not multitaskers. So, but male teachers, the reason why male teachers do not get involved much into politics is because of this particular quality. When they teach, they're teaching and sincerely teaching. And I'm not saying women teachers are bad. I'm only saying there is something that why men are born in Mars and women are born in Venus. That is something that inherently is genetically there within us. So don't worry about it. Mahila Vishwavidyalaya and Mahila universities, ये सारी चीज हम ये नहीं बोल सकते कि महिला विद्यालय अच्छे नहीं है और कोएड वाले अच्छे हैं, ये सारी चीज हम नहीं आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते, जनरलाइज भी नहीं करना चाहिए। लेकिन ये बात है, एकेडमिक फ्रेटर्निटी में बहुत सारे चीजें हैं जिसमें बदलाव हमसे लेके आना है और हर एक व्यक्ति को एक अपॉर्चुनिटी है इम्प्रूव करने के लिए या चेंज करने के लिए। इवन इम्प्रूव इज नॉट अ राइट वर्ड, चेंज करने के लिए विद द चेंजिंग टाइम। मैंने जैसे पहले आपको बता दिया डायनासोर के कहानी, आई डोंट नो वेदर आई सेड इट टू यू और नॉट, द थियोरी ऑफ एवोल्यूशन in which we say the fittest will survive. The dinosaur did not survive because it did not adapt. We as teachers should not become the dinosaurs in the class. We have to be relevant to our subject, relevant to our students. Or you should also not be like Atlas. Have you heard about the great thinker Atlas? Atlas का एक sculpture है. Atlas holds the globe on the shoulder, the entire earth. हम ये सारे प्रॉब्लम्स नहीं होल्ड करना है, हम हमारी विषय में जितना सीमित है, just do your bit. So on one side, don't become the dinosaur in the class. On the other side, don't think of yourself as Atlas carrying the entire world's problems on your shoulders. Do your bit. Your bit is what we covered. Only empower yourselves with that. Then you will become an effective teacher. You will also get recognized because of your quality, and you will become the change yourself and therefore bring about change in the education system. I hope I have inspired you enough, Ranju.
Thank you, ma'am.
Handle that. Any other questions? Yeah, Mukesh Kumar.
जी मैम, मैं मुकेश कुमार, बरेली कॉलेज बरेली, समाज शास्त्र विभाग में मैम असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर हूँ जी। मैम मेरा क्वेश्चन न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी को लेकर के है मैम। उसमें प्राइवेट जो कोर्स हैं उसको लेकर के क्या कहा गया है, और जैसे कि मैं यहाँ पर देख रहा हूँ मेरे यहाँ रुहेलखंड बरेली यूनिवर्सिटी में जो प्राइवेट फार्म होते हैं, जिससे कि जो स्टूडेंट होता है वो 1 ईयर में एक बार एग्जाम देता है और पास हो जाता है। एमए या जो पीजी कोर्सेस होते हैं वो 2 ईयर में 2 बार एग्जाम देकर के पास कर सकता है। यहाँ पर न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी होती है जिसमें जो इंटरनल असेसमेंट होता है या कई बार जो होते हैं, तो इस तरीके से रेगुलर आने वाले जो प्रोसेस होती है उसमें नहीं आ सकता है। तो यहाँ पर तो जो रेगुलर कोर्सेस हैं वहां पर तो अटेंडेंस कम हो जाएगी, जो इनरोलमेंट है वो रेगुलर कोर्सेज में कम हो जाए। इस बारे में जो न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी है जो अभी है 2020, ये क्या कहती है? क्या इस तरीके के कोर्स मान्य होंगे या नहीं मान्य होंगे, या ऐसे प्राइवेट कोर्स करने से इस एजुकेशन पर जो न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन पर क्या इफेक्ट पड़ेगा?
प्राइवेट जो हम अलाउ करते हैं, प्राइवेट स्टूडेंट अगर स्कूली एग्जाम के लिए अंडर ग्रेजुएट प्रोग्राम या पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट, इसके लिए स्पेसिफिकली हमने नहीं बताया है, एक्सेप्ट दैट वो ड्यूरेशन मिनिमम जो हमने रिक्वायर किया है वो तो रखना ही है। अगर वो 2 साल के मास्टर्स है तो 2 साल ही रहेंगे। लेकिन आज के दिन में जो हमने जैसे डिस्टेंस एजुकेशन हर एक यूनिवर्सिटी में है, वो इधर डिस्टेंस मोड से करेगा या फिर वो प्राइवेट रजिस्ट्रेशन से अगर करेंगे, जो रिक्वायरमेंट होती है, जो उनका असाइनमेंट और ये सब जो सबमिट करना है, ये तो उन्हें फॉलो करना ही पड़ेगा। ये अलग बात है कि वो शायद इंटरनल एग्जाम के हिसाब से नहीं देंगे, लेकिन वो शायद इंटरनल असेसमेंट के हिसाब से देंगे। तो
मैम इस तरीके के कोर्स में कोई भी इंटरनल में कोई असाइनमेंट नहीं होता है, केवल एग्जाम देना होता है 1 ईयर।
सच कोर्सेज ग्रेजुअली वी विल हैव टू सी। प्राइवेट तो हम स्टॉप नहीं कर पाएंगे, क्योंकि वो प्राइवेट एग्जाम देने की जो सुविधा हमने दी है, ये बच्चों को किसी कारण फुल टाइम एजुकेशन में नहीं आ सकते हैं। इसी वजह से वो हो सकता है कि नाइट में वो लोग वर्क करते हैं या जो भी है, वी नीड नॉट एंटर इनटू दैट, वी रिस्पेक्ट दैट देयर आर सम रीजंस व्हाई दे आर डूइंग इट। तो उनको जो एक अपॉर्चुनिटी हमने हायर एजुकेशन के लिए दिया हुआ है, ये हम समझते हैं कि ये जो 2 एग्जाम्स के हिसाब से वो कवर करते, इट इज लाइक 2 थिंग्स, आई विल पुट इट लाइक दिस। इवन रेगुलर स्टूडेंट जो कॉलेज में आते हैं, जो मिनिमम अटेंडेंस के हिसाब से वो लोग फाइनल ईयर एग्जाम के लिए परमिशन मिल जाती है, और वो कोई भी टेक्स्ट बुक से पढ़ते नहीं है, सिर्फ गाइड के हिसाब से वो पढ़ते और एग्जाम पास करते हैं। यू कैन डू नथिंग अबाउट इट, इट इज ओनली दैट इट इज देयर। All that you can try and see is that at least if they are finally giving exams, they should not get it from the textbooks. So आपका एग्जामिनेशन सिस्टम में अगर चेंज लेके आ जाएंगे, जिसमें वो एप्लीकेशन करना है, तो वो टेक्स्ट बुक से या गाइड से सीखने से उन्हें आंसर नहीं मिलेंगे। जब आप मेमोरी टेस्टिंग से शिफ्ट करोगे, तो जिस तरह से रेगुलर कॉलेज में भी जो एग्जाम वो बच्चे नहीं पढ़ते हैं और लास्ट में पढ़ते हैं, या वो प्राइवेट वाले भी अगर है, वो एग्जाम भी अगर वो टेक्स्ट बुक से ही नहीं मिल रहा है आंसर, देन ऑब्वियसली उनका लर्निंग किस हिसाब से चेंज होना ही है। सो पॉलिसी में, एनईपी में हमने नहीं लिखा है कि प्राइवेट स्टूडेंट रजिस्ट्रेशन इज देयर, नॉट देयर, नथिंग इज रिटन। पॉलिसीज डोंट टच अपॉन minor things of these kind. But what I'm giving you is a real example. Even now in your regular degree program, there are students who seriously study from textbooks, do everything in a very systematic manner. Then there is a 10% or 50% in that range students who do not attend. Finally they say their minimum attendance is there, go and give an exam, but study the day before from a guide or a small note sort of a book, 10 years paper, कुछ आंसर है वो देके वो पास हो रहा है। वो क्यों पास हो रहा है? क्योंकि एग्जाम में आपने मेमोरी टेस्ट की है। एग्जाम में उस सब्जेक्ट का अगर कंसेप्चुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग को अप्लाई करने की बात थी, कोई प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग की बात थी, जिसमें उसका एनालिटिकल स्किल्स आप टेस्ट कर रहे हो, आप जब तक वो नहीं करोगे और सिर्फ मेमोरी टेस्ट करेंगे, तब प्राइवेट स्टूडेंट भी पास होगा, जो एग्जामिनेशन सिर्फ नाम के लिए अटेंड कर रहा है वो भी पास हो जाएगा। तो सिस्टमिक चेंज जिस तरह से हमने नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में बताया है, अगर वो चेंज लेके आ जाएंगे, आपके असेसमेंट टूल्स में चेंज लेके आ जाएंगे, देन यू विल फाइंड कि स्टूडेंट्स में सच में, जैसे मैंने बताया, आउटकम बेस्ड एजुकेशन के हिसाब से एनरिच्ड लर्निंग आउटकम्स होगा। एनईपी प्राइवेट स्टूडेंट रजिस्ट्रेशन या सारे चीज पे कुछ नहीं बताया है। दिस इज समथिंग दैट विल फ्लो। हमने ये बताया है कि कोचिंग क्लासेस वी शुड डिस्करेज। क्यों बच्चा कोचिंग क्लास में जाता है और सारे बच्चे जो जाके कोचिंग क्लास से पढ़ाई करके आ रहे हैं? क्योंकि कोचिंग क्लास एक टेक्निक बताता है, स्पीड विथ एक्यूरेसी टू डू समथिंग, एंड दे डोंट अटेंड द रियल हायर सेकेंडरी स्कूल्स, दे गो इनटू द कोचिंग। वी वांट टू ब्रेक दैट बिजनेस ऑफ कोचिंग क्लास. We want to shut it down, and that the policy has said, which is a clear reflection of the fact that we do not like to take up a system where students actually do not broaden their horizons of knowledge, but are merely acquiring some capability which is very temporary, which is not impacting their overall performance. And when they go out into the life, वो हो सकता है कि वो successful नहीं रहेगा. And also during the coaching, lot of stress which is resulting in student suicide. आप जानते हो कोटा में क्या होती है, और you are seeing that in many higher education institutions. So coaching culture के against NEP ने clearly बताया हुआ है। लेकिन आपके जैसे प्रश्न थे, ये प्राइवेट स्टूडेंट या लास्ट मिनट में जो पढ़ाई करते हैं उसका इनजस्टिस किस तरह से होती है, दिस चेंज लेके आना है। तो हम रोड टेस्टिंग, मेमोराइजेशन से मूव करके अलग मैकेनिज्म से हम स्टूडेंट्स के कैपेबिलिटीज को टेस्ट करें, ताकि उनका साइंटिफिक टेम्पर, उनका लॉजिकल रीजनिंग, उनका एनालिटिकल स्किल्स, और these things are tested so that only if they understood something fundamentally in depth will they be able to answer that paper, not someone who studied whole night by hearting something and going and vomiting in an examination paper. तो सिस्टम में वो चेंज एनईपी ने बताया है, उस तरह से वो चेंज लेके आ जाएंगे। तो ये जो आप बताते हैं दूसरे प्रॉब्लम्स, ये तो निकल जाना चाहिए। Any more questions?
Hello, ma'am.
Questions and we can stop after that. Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, I'm Manish Bhattacharya from Durgapur Government College, West Bengal. You are just talking about we should discourage the tuition matter, but the problem is when the assistant professor himself is give tuition and they give motivation for tuition in their class, then what should we do? Like there are
That
many
is
assistant
what-
professors.
No,
There is
that is
many,
what
many.
we are saying. We are
There are many-
conscious of the fact that there are teachers who do not teach in the regular assignment and encourage the students to come to tuition because they can make money. As simple as that.
Exactly.
Now, that being the case, gradually we would like to see why they are telling to come to the tuition if they are able to teach. Mechanisms to hold teachers accountable, to even throw them out of jobs, to even dismiss them. These are the things that we are telling in terms of professionals and accountability of teachers. We want institutions to do that. You cannot say because I got a job that I will not be thrown out of that job if I do not perform. And that is why under the UGC guidelines, we are very clear that it is not necessary because you got as an assistant professor or because you're a school teacher, you will continue till you retire and continue to get your beautiful pension. No. It will not be done because we have said punitive action will be taken. And such teachers, the system itself will throw up methods by which they will be. Currently, वो नहीं किया जाता है, लेकिन ये system में लेके आएंगे. That is what we are envisaging.
एक्चुअली ये जो करप्शन है ये मैम गार्जियन के अंदर भी घुस चुका है कि गार्जियन अपने बच्चों को बोलते हैं यार तुम उन टीचर के पास जाओ जो ट्यूशन पढ़ाते हैं क्योंकि तुमको क्वेश्चन या सजेशन ज्यादा मिलेंगे।
क्योंकि वो करप्शन वो एग्जामिनेशन पेपर सेटिंग में हो रहा है ना, और पेपर आप इस तरह से दे रहे हो जैसे आपने टीवी में देखा है कि बहुत सारे बच्चे बाहर खड़े विंडो के अंदर से पेपर लेके जा रहे हैं, क्योंकि वो आंसर अवेलेबल है। वो आंसर दिमागी तौर से आपको एनालाइज करके करना है, तो बाहर बैठा हुआ कोई नहीं कुछ कर सकता है, क्योंकि वो क्वेश्चन ही इस तरह से मांगा है कि आपके मस्तिष्क हैज टू बी यूज्ड, योर ब्रेन हैज टू बी यूज्ड to answer that. Nobody sitting outside can send a piece of paper, or you cannot keep writing in your shirt cuff sleeve or your collar or your shoe or whatever and start copying. That happens because the question, as I said, assessment reform बहुत जरूरी है. That is the only way you can bring about change. Yeah, Dr. Shalini will make yours the last question. I don't want to disappoint a woman teacher.
मैम ये पूछना चाह रही थी मैं कि जो बच्चे दिव्यांग है उनके लिए एनईपी 2020 में क्या है?
We have made a lot of provisions. Actually, मैंने जब आपको बताया था कि इक्विटी में सोशली एंड इकोनॉमिकली डिसएडवांटेज्ड ग्रुप्स है, उनके लिए हमने लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटी और फिजिकल डिसेबिलिटी ये दोनों के लिए हमने बताया हुआ है। एंड ये हम मेजर्स जो बोल रहे हैं, एक तो उनको बेसिक फैसिलिटीज जैसे जो देख नहीं पाते हैं उनके लिए ऑडियो बुक्स, जो जो सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है उनको उनके लिए जो दूसरे बुक से ब्रेल के बुक से जैसे लेके आ जाए, ये सारे चीज जो आई वुड से असिस्टिव डिवाइसेस है, और उनके साथ जिस तरह से these have to be done. Along with that, the Rehabilitation Council of India, actually this is the regulatory body for teaching children with disabilities. इनके अंदर काफी सारे आज के दिन में इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन के लिए मेथड्स बताए हैं। आप अगर इसमें इंटरेस्ट रखना चाहेंगे, नेशनल करिकुलम फ्रेमवर्क फॉर स्कूल एजुकेशन जो स्कूली शिक्षा के लिए है, काफी सारे एग्जाम्पल्स दिए हैं जिस तरह से अलग अलग डिसेबिलिटी के लिए किस तरह से एक विषय में हम एक्सरसाइजेस दे सकते हैं। उसी चीज को एडवांस लेवल में आप हायर एजुकेशन में भी लेके आ सकते हैं, क्योंकि हायर एजुकेशन में हमने तो पॉलिसी में इतना ही लिखा है कि अगर हम सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट की बात बोल रहे हैं और जिसमें डिसेबिलिटीज वाले बच्चे, बहुत फिजिकल एंड लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटीज, डिसलेक्सिया हो, ऑटिज्म हो, या जो भी व्हाट वी कॉल लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटीज है, जो स्लो लर्नर्स है, एक तो वो एग्जामिनेशन के टाइम एनहांस करते हैं, उनको कुछ डिवाइसेस लेके आने के लिए हम सुविधा देते हैं, ये सारे हमने लिखा हुआ है। बट इफ यू वांट स्पेसिफिकली करिकुलर स्ट्रेटजीज, देन यू नीड टू रियली लुक एट द मटेरियल्स दैट आर देयर। उसके लिए आपको अलग सा प्रिपेयर करना ही पड़ेगा। मैंने एक एग्जाम्पल दिया है नेशनल करिकुलम फ्रेमवर्क स्कूल एजुकेशन, लेकिन पॉलिसी तो ये चाहती है unless you look at this segment of the population, other than the 3% reservation that we give laterally for the hearing impaired and speech impaired and physical, those who cannot walk and so on, we are talking of learning disabilities to be addressed in a manner whereby which they are integrated, or mentoring, many methods by which you are actually looking at all these students and their higher education aspirations are fulfilled also. तो ये देख लीजिए आप, पॉलिसी तो बहुत ही सपोर्टिव लिखा हुआ है।
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
I enjoyed
so much,
watching
ma'am.
your
Thank you,
session.
ma'am.
Thank you,
To all
ma'am.
the
Thank
best.
you, ma'am.
As teachers, I'm sure
धन्यवाद, madam.
Thank you so much,
we
ma'am.
have better. Somebody has raised a hand now.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
नहीं वो लेता हूँ, रात को लेता हूँ।
No, your session was one of the most useful session.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much, madam.
Thank you, ma'am.